Hello, this is Jeff. Welcome back to Polyfile. Today's video is going to be all about what's called the relationship escalator. So, okay, what is the relationship escalator? Well, first of all, let me say this is not actually a concept specific to polyamory. It's just something that polyamorous people are aware of and tend to talk about, especially people in what's referred to as the solo poly community. It's very common for people to talk about this there because it's something that's actually on their mind a lot, because they define relationships differently from how a lot of the mainstream culture does. So they notice this pattern, and so they've come up with this term. But it actually applies to basically any intimate relationship, that it's worth someone deciding whether or not this makes sense to them, and whether they're aware that this is being imposed on them. So what is the relationship escalator in some sort of concrete sense? What am I actually referring to here? Well, it's a set of rules imposed upon you by a society, and they're based around how you determine whether or not a relationship is successful, whether you yourself are mature and succeeding at adulthood in a certain way. How it goes is something like this. At the bottom, you start out at the bottom level where you're just sort of innocent flirting with people, getting to know them, something like that. Then there's a level above that, which is going to be, well, when you start kind of dating them, something like that. You start drifting closer together, seeing if you work as a relationship. Then there's a step where you're trying to present yourself more as an actual solidified couple to your community. Then there's further steps where you start becoming more directly connected to each other in the sense of maybe shared finances, maybe you move in together, something like that. Often this is the place where someone will become engaged to be married. Then there's a marriage step. Then there's the, well, let's buy a house together and have kids. And the idea, there's different ways of looking at each rung. That's just kind of a very common example of how to think about it. But the problem here is that you're never allowed to decide that you're happy at any one point. In this system, getting to the top is success. Failing to get to the top is failure. So this can cause a problem, because what if you don't want to get to the top? What if you like what you have? What if you get to a certain point with someone and you think, this relationship is perfect, and you're really, really happy with it. You love them, you love the connection you have with them, it's exactly what you've always wanted, you really like who they are, and exactly what kind of connection you have between your lives. But the other person is now saying, well, this relationship's a dead end. In fact, that is often the term used, the dead end relationship, in that, oh, well, it's not progressing to the next level, so there's something wrong with it, it's failing. It's not going anywhere. Well, maybe one of you didn't want it to go anywhere. Maybe one of you was really happy where it was. You don't have to leave a happy state if it's what you wanted. So this is where this can become an issue. Now, first of all, something to notice about this is that the relationship escalator ideas actually work very well for a lot of people. The problem isn't in the ideas themselves. The problem is in the idea that there is only one way of looking at it. The problem is that if you don't agree with this, there's something wrong with you. This is why, in many cases, you end up with very kind of antagonistic breakups in relationships, because what you've done now is you've wasted that person's time. If the purpose that they had was to get to the top of the escalator, any relationship which does not get there tends to be viewed as something that was in their way. Often they will actually, instead of just acknowledging that maybe there's a disagreement about where you wanted to go with this, no, it's a problem with them. They didn't want to ride the escalator. They must be immature, selfish. They must have some fear of commitment, something like that. It's never just as simple as, we were just different people. It turned out we didn't get along on all the levels we expected to. We didn't have the same expectations for the future. It's okay for relationships to end. Remember, almost all of them do. And the other thing to remember about the relationship escalator is that only one can ever succeed. Because if you get to that top and then you divorce, well, that wasn't the one. That was just a mistake you must have made when you were younger. It was a mistake. It was a failure. So now you can go find the actual success. So you're only allowed to ever succeed once at this. And that success is marked by, well, the relationship ends because one of you dies. Which is kind of a weirdly macabre way of looking at this. You're supposed to be able to enjoy your life. Enjoy the connections you have with people while you have them. That's okay. It doesn't have to go a certain way. So really the core thing to take away from this is be aware of this idea. You can agree with it or not. That's fine. The point is, You need to know what you want. Don't let a society or some sort of external group tell you what your relationships should be. Don't let them tell you there is one way of doing this. You can only do it that way. And if you're failing to do it that way, there's something wrong with you. No, it's not that. It's that maybe sometimes you have different ways of looking at things, and that's okay. So the main thing to take away from this is not that there's anything intrinsically wrong with the idea of agreeing to this sort of one step after another system, ending with marriage and kids. Maybe that's what you want. But just remember, you get to choose this. Don't let someone else tell you what is the correct way of living life, what the correct way of building a relationship is. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe it isn't. That's fine. Just figure out what you want and be honest with yourself about that. Be honest with the people you're connected to about that. And don't let them tell you that there's anything wrong with you because you don't want to ride the escalator all the way that they do. So, thanks for watching. Leave a comment here if you have any kind of questions or feedback or anything like that. And I'll get back to you when I can. Thanks. Bye.